Welcome, dear listener. I'm so glad you found your way here tonight. My name is Mrinmoy, and I will be your guide as we step back in time to the quiet, gaslit world of Victorian England. Find a comfortable place now. Let your body sink into your bed, your pillow, or your favorite chair. Allow the weight of the day to slowly melt away from your shoulders, your neck, and your chest. Take a slow, deep breath in, and as you let it out, feel yourself beginning to settle. Tonight, we travel to a simpler time, a time of gaslight glow, crackling hearths, and the gentle rhythms of family life. There are no deadlines here, no worries, no rushing. Only the soft warmth of a parlor fire, the quiet clink of teacups, and the peaceful murmur of familiar voices. Close your eyes if you haven't already. Let the sounds of this bygone era carry you far away from the noise of the modern world. You are safe here. You are welcome here. Tonight, we visit the Hawthorne family, a modest middle-class household in a quiet London suburb during the 1880s. Through their gentle evening routines, you will drift into deep, restful sleep, carried by the soft gaslight, the crackling fires, and the peaceful rhythms of Victorian nights. Let us begin our journey together. The sun was setting over the chimney pots of Elm Street, its final golden rays painting the brick facades of the neat row houses in warm shades of amber and rose. The sky above London was a soft tapestry of fading blues and gentle pinks, slowly deepening into the rich purple of twilight. A thin veil of fog, the kind that London was so famous for, began to drift through the streets, softening the edges of the world and muffling the sounds of the city into a distant, comfortable hum. At number 24 Elm Street, a sturdy brick house with white framed windows and a black iron gate stood quietly among its neighbors. The front garden was small but well tended, with roses climbing the trellis beside the door and a few late blooming chrysanthemums adding splashes of gold and rust to the orderly beds. The windows glowed with the soft, golden light of gas lamps, spilling warm rectangles of light onto the pavement outside. Inside the house, the hallway was warm and welcoming. The wallpaper, a tasteful pattern of cream and sage green, seemed to glow in the gaslight that flickered from the wall sconces. A mahogany coat stand stood near the door, its brass hooks holding Edward Hawthorne's coat and hat. A small table with a marble top held a silver tray for calling cards and a small vase of dried lavender that filled the air with its gentle, calming fragrance. Edward Hawthorne, a clerk at the railway office, stepped through the front door at exactly 6:30, as he did every evening. His day had been long but uneventful. Columns of figures to add, ledgers to check, correspondence to file. Nothing that had troubled him, nothing that had unsettled his quiet, orderly mind. He hung his coat and hat with practiced ease, then paused to run a hand through his dark hair, smoothing it after the day's labors. The warmth of the house embraced him immediately. The chill of the autumn evening had settled into his bones during his walk from the station, but the cozy heat of the hallway drove it away. He could hear the sounds of his family moving about the house, the soft clatter of dishes from the kitchen, the murmur of voices from upstairs, the occasional laugh of a child. "Edward, is that you?" His wife's voice came from the parlor, and he smiled. Clara's voice was always warm, always welcoming, a sound that had become as familiar to him as his own heartbeat. He walked through the open doorway and found her there, seated in her favorite armchair by the fire, a book open on her lap. She looked up as he entered, her eyes crinkling at the corners with a gentle smile. "Good evening, my dear," she said, closing the book and setting it aside. "You are just in time. The children have been asking for you all afternoon." Edward crossed the room and bent to kiss his wife's cheek. She smelled of lavender and beeswax, the familiar scents of her daily life. "And I have been thinking of them all day," he replied, his voice soft and sincere. "Where are they?" As if in answer, two small figures appeared in the doorway. Thomas, age 12, was tall for his age, with his father's dark hair and his mother's gentle eyes. He stood with the careful composure of a boy who was trying very hard to be grown up, but the eagerness in his expression betrayed his excitement. Beside him stood little Emily, age 8, her fair hair tied back with a blue ribbon, her small hands clasped together in front of her. "Papa!" Emily cried, breaking from her brother's side and running to her father. Edward knelt down and scooped her into his arms, holding her close. She smelled of soap and clean cotton, of childhood and innocence. "And how was your day, my little one?" Edward asked, his voice warm with affection. "Oh, it was wonderful," Emily exclaimed. "We learned about the Romans in school, and I drew a picture of a Roman soldier, and I helped Mama bake a cake, and I fed the birds in the garden, and—" "Emily, let Papa catch his breath," Clara said gently, but her eyes were bright with amusement. "He has only just arrived home." Emily giggled and buried her face in her father's shoulder. Thomas stepped forward, more reserved but no less pleased to see his father. "Good evening, Father," he said, his voice breaking slightly as it moved between boyhood and manhood. "I have completed all my lessons for tomorrow." Edward reached out and ruffled his son's hair. "Well done, Thomas. That is just what I like to hear." The maid, a young woman named Margaret who had been with the household for 3 years, appeared in the doorway to announce that tea was almost ready. She was a quiet, efficient girl from the countryside, with rosy cheeks and a calm demeanor that suited the household perfectly. She curtsied slightly before retreating to the kitchen. As twilight settled fully over Elm Street, the maid moved through the house, lighting the gas lamps one by one. Their soft hiss and golden flicker filled the rooms with a comforting glow. In the hallway, the lamp cast warm patterns on the wallpaper. In the parlor, the light danced across Clara's embroidery and the spines of the books on the shelves. In the dining room, it gleamed on the polished oak table and the crystal glasses that caught the light like captured stars. The heavy velvet curtains were drawn against the chill London fog, shutting out the damp evening air and the dimming sky. The gas lamps created their own small universe inside the house, a world of warmth and light and comfort. Outside, the fog swirled around the street lamps, muffling the sounds of the city. A carriage passed by, its wheels clattering softly on the cobblestones, but the sound was distant and dreamlike, as if it belonged to another world entirely. Edward settled into his chair, letting the warmth of the fire wash over him. The strain of the day began to ease from his shoulders. He listened to the sounds of his family moving about the house, the soft rustle of Clara's dress as she straightened the cushions, the murmur of the children's voices from the hall, the distant clatter of dishes as Margaret prepared the evening meal. This was the hour he loved best, the hour when the busy day softened into evening peace, the hour when the world outside faded away and only the warmth of home remained. He breathed deeply, the familiar sense of his home filling his lungs, beeswax polish, lavender, the faint trace of cooking from the kitchen, the clean smell of starched linens. Clara sat down in the chair across from him, her embroidery hoop in her hands. She began to work on the delicate rose pattern she had been creating for the past week, her needle moving in and out with practiced ease. The firelight played across her face, softening her features, making her look younger than her 35 years. "Edward," she said softly, "I received a letter from my sister today. She asks if we might visit at Christmas. What do you think?" Edward considered the question, his thoughts drifting slowly. "I think that sounds lovely, my dear. We shall plan for it." Clara smiled, a gentle, peaceful smile that spoke of contentment. "I shall write to her tomorrow and let her know." They sat in companionable silence, the fire crackling softly in the grate. Outside, the fog grew thicker, but inside, the warmth and light held steady. The gas lamps hissed gently, their golden glow a constant, comforting presence. Thomas appeared in the doorway, a book in his hands. "Papa, would you read to me tonight?" he asked, his voice tinged with the shyness of a boy who was almost too old to ask such things. Edward smiled. "I would be happy to, my son. What book have you chosen?" Thomas held up the volume, a well-worn copy of The Swiss Family Robinson. Edward remembered reading it when he was Thomas's age, the same book, perhaps even the same edition. He felt a wave of nostalgia wash over him, a sense of connection to the past and to the future all at once. "After dinner," Edward said, "we shall read together." Thomas nodded, his face brightening, and disappeared back into the hall. Emily's voice could be heard chattering to Margaret in the kitchen, her high, sweet voice rising and falling like a small bird singing. The clock on the mantelpiece began to chime. It was a beautiful piece, a Victorian long case clock with a mahogany case and a face decorated with painted roses. The chime was soft and melodic, a gentle reminder of the passage of time. But time here was not a tyrant. It was simply a companion, a steady rhythm that marked the beats of a peaceful life. Edward leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes for a moment. The warmth, the light, the sounds of his family, they wrapped around him like a blanket, safe and familiar. He felt a deep sense of gratitude for this life, for this home, for these quiet evenings that seemed so ordinary and yet were so precious. The last traces of twilight faded from the sky, and the gaslit world of the Hawthorne household settled into its evening rhythm. The fog pressed against the windows, muffling the world outside, but inside, the fire glowed, the lamps shone, and the family breathed a collective sigh. This was the hour when the day softened into peace. This was the hour of the gaslight glow. A soft chime from the dining room announced that dinner was served. The Hawthorne family rose from their separate corners of the house and made their way to the dining room, drawn by the savory aromas that drifted from the kitchen. The gas lamps in the hallway cast a warm, golden path before them, guiding the way like gentle beacons. The dining room was the grandest room in the house, though grand was perhaps too strong a word for this modest middle-class home. The room was long and narrow, with a tall window that faced the street. The velvet curtains were drawn against the night, and the gaslight from the crystal chandelier above the table created a pool of warm, golden light that made the silverware sparkle and the glasses gleam. The long oak table was the heart of the room. It had been in Edward's family for 3 generations, brought from the countryside when his parents had moved to London. The wood was dark and polished, its surface bearing the faint marks of countless meals shared with family and friends. The tablecloth was white linen, freshly laundered and pressed, and the napkins were folded into careful shapes that Clara had learned from her own mother. Margaret had set the table with care. The plates were fine china, a wedding gift from Edward's aunt, painted with delicate blue flowers. The glasses were cut crystal, catching the light and scattering it into tiny rainbows. The silverware was heavy and polished, the family crest engraved on each piece. A simple design of a tree and a river, representing the land from which they came. Edward took his place at the head of the table, his chair slightly larger and more ornate than the others. It was a position of quiet authority, though Edward wore it lightly, never demanding deference or respect but earning it through his kindness and steadiness. Clara sat at the opposite end, her place by the door that led to the kitchen, where she could supervise the serving and ensure that everything ran smoothly. Thomas and Emily took their places on either side. Thomas sat to his father's right, the position of honor for the eldest child. Emily sat to her mother's left, her small feet not quite reaching the floor, her chair carefully positioned so that she could reach her plate without difficulty. The maid brought in the first course, a thick vegetable soup, its surface glistening with a thin sheen of golden butter. The scent of leeks, carrots, and fresh herbs filled the room, warm and comforting. Margaret ladled the soup into the bowls with careful precision, ensuring each serving was exactly equal. "Thank you, Margaret," Clara said softly. That will be all for now." The maid curtsied and withdrew, leaving the family to their meal. The soft click of the door as it closed behind her was a signal. The evening had truly begun. Edward picked up his spoon and lifted a small amount of the soup to his lips. It was perfect, warm, savory, rich with the flavors of the garden and the kitchen. He nodded approvingly and took another spoonful. "Tell me about your day, Clara," he said, his voice gentle and encouraging. "What did you do while I was at the office?" Clara smiled, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "I wrote several letters this morning, one to my sister, as I mentioned, and one to my cousin in Bath. Then I went into the garden to cut some flowers for the parlor. The roses have been so lovely this autumn. And this afternoon, I helped Emily with her reading. She is making such good progress." She turned to her daughter, her face warm with maternal pride. "Emily, why don't you tell Papa what you read today?" Emily sat up straighter in her chair, her small face serious with concentration. "I read a poem, Papa. It was about a little bird that lost its way, and a kind lady helped it find its nest again." "A poem," Edward repeated, his voice warm with approval. "And what did you think of it?" Emily thought for a moment, her brow furrowing in the adorable way that always made her father smile. "I liked it. It was sad that the bird was lost, but I was happy when the lady helped it. It made me think that everyone needs a little help sometimes." Clara reached over and squeezed her daughter's hand gently. "That is a very wise thought, my dear." Thomas, who had been eating his soup quietly, looked up. "Father, I learned about the steam engine in school today. The teacher says it will change the world. Do you think that is true?" Edward considered the question carefully. The steam engine was a subject that had dominated conversation in the railway office for years. He had seen the changes it had brought to the country, the new lines cutting through the countryside, the stations rising in towns and cities, the ever-increasing speed and efficiency of travel. "I do think it is true, Thomas," he said slowly. "I have seen the changes with my own eyes. When I was a boy, travel by stagecoach could take days. Now, with the railway, a journey that once took a week can be completed in a matter of hours. It is a remarkable invention." Thomas's eyes lit up. "I want to work with steam engines one day, Father. I want to help build them or design them." Edward nodded, his heart swelling with pride. "That is a fine ambition, my son. You must work hard at your studies and never stop learning. The world is changing, and there will be many opportunities for those who are prepared." The conversation continued in this gentle, unhurried way. Edward spoke of the office and the small curiosities of city life. A missing file, a new ledger clerk, the poor weather that had delayed the trains. Clara spoke of the garden and her plans for the coming season. The children offered their own contributions, their young voices blending with their parents in a warm and comfortable rhythm. The soup was followed by roasted mutton, served with boiled potatoes and fresh bread. The mutton was tender and flavorful, cooked slowly with herbs and a touch of red wine that Margaret had purchased from the shop on the corner. The potatoes were perfectly soft, their skins golden and crisp. The bread was still warm from the oven, its crust crackling as Clara cut it into thick slices. The children ate with good manners, though Emily occasionally forgot and used her fingers, prompting a gentle reminder from her mother. The clink of silverware against china was a soft, rhythmic sound, as steady and soothing as a lullaby. The fire crackled in the grate, and the gas lamps hummed softly above. "The weather has been so damp," Clara said, reaching for the salt cellar. "I think we shall need to order more coal soon. The fire has been burning so quickly these past weeks." Edward nodded. "I shall see to it tomorrow. We cannot let the cold seep into the house." He reached for the pepper grinder, the familiar motion a comfort in itself. The ritual of the meal, the small acts of passing and sharing, created a sense of connection that went beyond words. This was not just a meal. It was a coming together, a reaffirmation of the bonds that held the family together. As the main course was cleared away, Margaret appeared with the dessert. A steamed pudding, dark and rich, with a golden syrup sauce that glistened in the lamplight. A bowl of cream was placed beside it, and Clara served each family member a generous portion. "This is delicious," Thomas said, his voice thick with appreciation. "Thank you, Mama." "Yes, thank you, Mama," Emily echoed, her mouth already full of pudding. Clara smiled, her heart full. "You are both very welcome." The pudding was followed by a small cup of tea for Edward and Clara and glasses of warm milk for the children. The meal ended slowly, with no one rushing to leave the table. The conversation had wound down to comfortable silences, the kind that spoke of deep contentment and mutual understanding. Edward leaned back in his chair, his hand resting on his full stomach. The warmth of the meal and the glow of the gaslight had made him drowsy, his eyelids growing heavy. He looked around the table at his family and felt a deep, abiding sense of gratitude. "I am blessed," he said softly, almost to himself. Clara heard him and smiled. "We all are, my dear. We all are." After the meal, the children helped clear the table under the watchful eye of Margaret, learning the quiet satisfaction of family duty. They carried the plates to the kitchen, their careful steps a small but meaningful contribution to the household. The evening was settling into its next phase, the meal's warmth still lingering in their bodies. The parlor called to them, its fire waiting, its cushions soft and inviting. With dinner finished and the table cleared, the Hawthorne family moved to the parlor, the heart of the evening, the room where the family truly came together after the demands of the day had been met. The parlor was the most comfortable room in the house, a space designed for rest and leisure, for conversation and quiet companionship. The room was square and cozy, its walls papered in a delicate pattern of cream and rose. The carpet was a deep burgundy, soft and thick beneath the feet, worn smooth in the paths that were most frequently traveled. 2 armchairs flanked the fireplace, upholstered in velvet that had faded to a gentle rose color over the years. A long sofa, covered in a deep blue fabric, sat against the far wall, its cushions soft and welcoming. The fire in the grate had been burning steadily all evening. Margaret had fed it earlier, and the coals now glowed with a deep, reddish light that cast dancing shadows across the room. The flames flickered and played, their soft crackling a constant, comforting presence. The warmth radiated from the hearth, spreading through the room like a gentle embrace. Edward settled into his favorite armchair, the one closest to the fire. It had been his father's chair, and before that, his grandfather's. The leather was worn smooth, the arms shaped by generations of hands. He leaned back and let out a long, contented sigh, feeling the warmth soak into his tired bones. Clara took the other armchair, the one with the small table beside it where she kept her embroidery hoop and her current book. The firelight played across her face, softening the lines around her eyes and mouth. She had been sitting in this chair for almost 15 years, and it had molded itself to her shape, fitting her like a glove. The children settled on the rug near the fire, their backs against the sofa, their slate boards and chalk in their hands. Thomas was practicing his sums, his brow furrowed in concentration. Emily was drawing, her small tongue poking out slightly as she worked on a picture of a cat. The room smelled of beeswax polish, the scent that Clara insisted the maid use on the furniture every week. It was a clean, pleasant scent, mixed with the faint lavender from Clara's handkerchief and the subtle sweetness of the fire. The combination was uniquely comforting, a sensory embrace that said, "Home," more clearly than any words could. Edward picked up his evening paper, the London Times, which he had purchased on his way home from the station. He unfolded it with a soft rustle, the familiar crackling sound of newsprint filling the quiet room. He read slowly, not because he was a slow reader, but because he wanted to savor this time to stretch it out for as long as possible. "The government is debating new railway regulations," he said, half to himself. "They are considering an expansion of the lines to the north." Clara looked up from her embroidery. "That would be wonderful for trade, would it not?" "It would," Edward agreed, "and it would make travel much easier for people like us. Perhaps we could take a holiday to the Lake District one day." The idea was a pleasant one, a dream to be savored. They had never taken a holiday as a family, but the possibility hung in the air like a promise. Thomas looked up from his sums, his interest peaked. "The Lake District, father? That is where the poet Wordsworth lived, is it not?" Edward nodded, impressed by his son's knowledge. "Indeed it is, Thomas. Wordsworth wrote many of his most famous poems about the lakes and hills of that region." "I would love to see them," Thomas said, his voice filled with youthful enthusiasm. "I would love to write poems about them one day." Edward smiled, his heart swelling with pride. "If you work hard, My son, you can accomplish anything you set your mind to. The conversation wound on in this gentle, unhurried way. Emily asked questions about the cat she was drawing. What color was it? What was its name? Clara suggested a name, Clover, and Emily wrote it beneath her drawing in careful letters. The fire popped and crackled, sending up a small shower of sparks that danced for a moment before fading into the warm shadows of the room. The gas lamps on the walls glowed softly, their light blending with the firelight to create a warm, golden ambience. The clock on the mantelpiece ticked steadily, a reassuring beat that marked the passing of time. Occasionally, the sound of carriage wheels drifted in from the street outside. The clatter of hooves on cobblestones was muted, softened by the fog that had settled over the city. It was a distant, dreamlike sound, a reminder that a world existed beyond the warm cocoon of the parlor, but it did not intrude on the peace of the evening. Clara's needle moved in and out of the fabric, creating a pattern of roses and vines. The embroidery was a long-term project, something she had been working on for months. It was not rushed, not hurried. It was simply a pleasant occupation, a way to keep her hands busy while her mind wandered. "Clara," Edward said, looking up from his paper, "shall we have some music this evening?" Clara smiled, her eyes lighting up. "I would like that very much. Emily, would you like to sing with me?" Emily nodded eagerly, her drawing forgotten. She scrambled to her feet and followed her mother to the upright piano that stood in the corner of the room. The piano was a beautiful instrument, its wood polished to a deep shine, its keys smooth and white from years of use. Clara sat down on the small bench, and Emily stood beside her, ready to sing. Clara began to play a simple hymn, one of the old ones that she had learned as a child. Her fingers moved with ease and confidence, the notes flowing like water. The melody was soft and gentle, the kind that seemed to float in the air like incense. Emily sang along, her high, sweet voice pure and clear. She knew the words by heart, had heard them sung so many times that they were etched into her memory. The song was about the beauty of the world and the kindness of God, simple and earnest and filled with grace. Edward set down his paper and closed his eyes, letting the music wash over him. The warmth of the fire, the gentle light of the gas lamps, the soft voices of his wife and daughter. Everything was perfect, everything was peaceful. The song came to an end, and the room was silent for a moment, the last notes of the piano hanging in the air like a blessing. "Beautiful," Thomas said softly. "Simply beautiful." Clara turned to look at him, a gentle smile on her face. "Thank you, dear. Would you like to try a song? I could teach you." Thomas hesitated, the shyness of adolescence flickering across his face. "Perhaps another evening, Mama. Tonight I would rather just listen." Clara nodded, understanding. The moment was not for forcing, not for pushing. It was for savoring, for letting things unfold at their own pace. She began to play another song, this one a gentle ballad, its melody wistful and sweet. Emily had returned to the rug, her head resting on her brother's shoulder, her eyes growing heavy. The fire crackled softly, and the gas lamps hissed, and the world outside drifted further and further away. This was the parlor hearth, the heart of the evening, the center of the family's peace. As the final notes of the piano faded into the warm air of the parlor, Clara left the instrument and returned to her chair by the fire. She had a book in her hand, a well-worn volume with a blue cloth cover, the gold lettering on the spine slightly faded. It was a collection of stories by Charles Dickens, and it had been a gift from Edward on their first anniversary. "Would anyone like to hear a story?" Clara asked, her voice soft and inviting. The children immediately perked up. Emily, who had been fighting sleep, opened her eyes wide. Thomas set his slate board aside, his attention fully captured. Edward smiled, settling deeper into his chair. The evening was unfolding just as it should. "The same book as last time, Mama?" Thomas asked. "The Christmas one?" Clara nodded. "Yes, I thought we might read a bit more from A Christmas Carol. It is never too early to think about the season of good cheer." She opened the book to the marked page and began to read. Her voice was soft and melodic, the rhythms of Dickens's prose flowing like music. She read about the cold and foggy streets of London, the bustling shops, the joyful preparations for Christmas. But more than that, she read about the kindness that bloomed even in the coldest of hearts, the hope that could transform even the most miserly of souls. The children listened, their eyes bright with wonder. They knew the story well, had heard it many times before, but it never grew old. There was something about the story that spoke to their young hearts, that touched something deep within them. Outside, the fog continued to press against the windows. A carriage passed by, its wheels muffled by the damp air. The sound was far away, as if it belonged to a different world entirely. Inside, the fire crackled, the gas lamps glowed, and Clara's voice wove a spell of warmth and comfort. "Tell us a story from your own childhood, Papa," Emily said, her voice drowsy but still eager. "You promised." Edward smiled, a distant look in his eyes. He had been thinking of his childhood often lately, perhaps because he was watching his own children grow up and wanted to hold on to the memories of his own youth. "When I was a boy," he began, his voice low and reflective, "I lived in the countryside. My father was a farmer, and we lived in a small cottage not far from the village. The cottage was not as grand as this house, but it was warm and comfortable, and the gardens were always full of flowers and vegetables." He paused, lost in memory. The fire crackled softly, filling the silence. "My mother used to tell me stories," he continued. "She would sit me on her lap and tell me tales of the old days, of the kings and queens, of the knights who rode out to defend the land. But the stories I loved best were about the harvest moon." "Harvest moon?" Emily asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Yes," Edward said. In the autumn, when the moon was full and golden, my mother would take me out into the fields. The wheat was always ready for the harvest, and the moon would rise over the hills like a great golden lantern. My mother said that the harvest moon was a blessing, a sign that the land was rich and generous. She said that if you made a wish on the harvest moon, it would come true by the next spring. Did your wishes come true? Thomas asked, his voice filled with curiosity. Edward smiled. Some of them did. I wished for a horse once, and my father gave me a pony for my birthday the following summer. I wished for good marks in my studies, and I received them. But the wish that came true most of all was the wish to have a family of my own, a family like the one I have here. He looked at Clara, and she met his gaze, her eyes bright with unshed tears of happiness. Emily came to sit beside her father, her small hand resting on his arm. I wish on the harvest moon every year, Papa. I wish for everyone in our family to be happy forever. Edward leaned down and kissed the top of her head. That is a very good wish, my dear. The fire crackled and popped, sending up a small shower of sparks. The gas lamps flickered slightly, casting shifting shadows across the walls. The clock ticked steadily, marking the passage of time in its unhurried way. Clara closed the book gently, not wanting to break the spell of the moment. I think that is enough for tonight, she said softly. The children should be getting ready for bed soon. Emily nodded but did not move from her father's side. Her eyes were heavy, her breathing slow and even. Thomas stood and stretched, his young body growing taller by the day. I shall carry her up, Edward said, his voice gentle. He lifted his daughter into his arms as if she weighed nothing, his movements careful and protective. Emily's head lolled against his shoulder, her small hand resting on his chest. Clara rose and blew out the candle on the mantel, leaving only the firelight and the gas lamps to illuminate the room. She followed Edward to the stairs, and the children's bedtime ritual began. Some evenings brought music to the Hawthorne household. It was not a grand affair, not a concert or a recital, but something far more intimate, family voices blending in harmony, the familiar notes of beloved songs filling the warm parlor air. There was something deeply soothing about these musical evenings, a sense of unity and peace that carried the family through the night. On this particular evening, as the fog pressed against the windows and the fire crackled softly in the grate, Clara settled onto the small wooden bench at the upright piano. She lifted the fallboard, her fingers hovering over the keys for a moment, feeling the cool ivory beneath her fingertips. The piano had been in her family for 3 generations, brought from her mother's home when she had married Edward. It was a beautiful instrument, its wood polished to a warm gleam, its sound rich and mellow. She began to play a gentle prelude, her fingers moving slowly, letting the notes flow like water. The melody was simple but lovely, a song she had known since childhood. The soft, melodic notes filled the parlor, blending with the crackling of the fire and the hiss of the gas lamps. Edward rose from his chair and moved to stand beside her. "May I join you?" he asked, his voice soft. Clara smiled and nodded, shifting slightly to make room on the bench. Edward sat beside her, his shoulder brushing against hers. He had a pleasant baritone voice, not trained but true, and he began to sing along with the melody. The song was an old one, a folk song from the countryside where he had grown up. It was about a young man leaving his home to seek his fortune, and the sweetheart he left behind. The tune was wistful and sweet, carrying the gentle sadness of farewell and the hope of reunion. Thomas and Emily, who had been sitting by the fire, looked up with interest. Emily scrambled to her feet and came to stand beside her mother, her small face bright with anticipation. "Can I sing too, Mama?" she asked. Clara paused her playing and turned to her daughter. "Of course, my dear. Do you know this song?" Emily shook her head. "But I could learn it. You could teach me." Clara laughed softly, a warm, musical sound. "Very well. Listen carefully, and I will teach you the chorus." She played the melody again, this time singing the words slowly, encouraging Emily to repeat them. Emily's high, sweet voice rose in hesitant imitation, growing stronger with each repetition. By the time the song ended, she was singing with confidence, her voice pure and clear. Thomas, encouraged by his sister's success, joined in as well. His voice was breaking, somewhere between boyhood and manhood, but he sang with enthusiasm, his young tenor blending with his mother's soprano and his father's baritone. The family sang together, their voices rising and falling in harmony. The fire crackled softly in the grate, and the gas lamps cast a warm, golden light across the room. Outside, the fog drifted through the streets, muffling the sounds of the city. But inside, the music created its own small universe. Clara began another song, a hymn this time, "Abide with Me." The melody was solemn and beautiful, its words speaking of comfort and protection. The family sang with quiet reverence, their voices blending in simple, heartfelt harmony. "The shadows fall," Edward sang, his voice rich and steady. "The day is fading, but thy love remains, always watching, always true." The song came to an end, and the last notes of the piano hung in the air like incense. The family sat in peaceful silence for a moment, the warmth of the music still radiating through them. "Will you play another one, Mama?" Emily asked, her voice drowsy but still eager. Clara considered for a moment. "I think we should all sing something light and cheerful," she said. "A song that will make us smile." She began to play a popular ballad, one of the lively songs that had become fashionable in the city. The tune was bright and energetic, with a chorus that invited participation. Edward and the children joined in, their voices rising with increasing enthusiasm. Emily had never sung this particular song before, but she quickly caught on, her small voice echoing the chorus with joyful abandon. Thomas's face was bright with laughter, and even Clara, who usually maintained a quiet composure, let herself be carried away by the music. Edward began to clap his hands in time with the music, his movements slightly clumsy but full of joy. Emily joined him, her small hands clapping with the same rhythm. Thomas, caught up in the moment, joined in as well. The parlor was filled with sound, the bright, melodic notes of the piano, the voices of the family, the rhythmic clapping of hands, the crackling of the fire, the soft hiss of the gas lamps. It was a joyful sound, a celebration of the simple pleasure of being together. Outside, the fog thickened, muffling the world in a soft, gray blanket. But inside the Hawthorne household, the music and warmth held the night at bay. As the song came to an end, the family fell into a contented silence. Emily rested her head against her mother's shoulder, her eyes half closed. Thomas sat on the rug, his head leaning against his father's knee. "Music," Edward said softly, "is the language of the heart." Clara looked at him, her eyes bright. "It is the only language we all speak," she agreed. The fire crackled softly, and the clock ticked steadily, and the night deepened around them. The music lingered in the air, a soft, gentle presence that would carry the family through the darkness of sleep. Not every evening brought music to the Hawthorne household. Some evenings were quieter, filled with the gentle sounds of individual pursuits. The scratch of a pen on paper, the rhythmic click of knitting needles, the soft rustle of pages being turned. These were the evenings when the family came together, but each member found their own peaceful occupation, a quiet communion of shared solitude. On this particular evening, the parlor was bathed in the warm glow of gas lamps and firelight. The fire crackled softly in the grate, casting dancing shadows across the rose-patterned wallpaper. The clock on the mantelpiece ticked steadily, its measured rhythm a comforting presence in the quiet room. Edward had settled into his favorite armchair, a small leather pouch beside him containing his watchmaking tools. He had inherited his father's pocket watch, a beautiful piece of craftsmanship from the 1850s, and he took great pleasure in maintaining it. The watch was opened on the small table beside him, its intricate gears and springs exposed to the lamplight. He picked up a tiny screwdriver, its tip no wider than a pin, and carefully adjusted one of the delicate springs. His movements were slow and precise, his breath held in concentration. The work required patience and a steady hand, and Edward found it deeply meditative. The world outside faded away as he focused on the tiny mechanisms, each gear and spring fitting together in perfect harmony. "Edward," Clara said softly, looking up from her embroidery, "that watch must be over 30 years old now." Edward nodded, his eyes still fixed on his work. 32, I believe. My father received it as a gift on his wedding day. It has been in the family ever since." "How wonderful that you can keep it running," Clara said. her voice warm with admiration. "It is a skill that will be passed down to Thomas, I hope." Edward smiled, a gentle, contented smile. "Thomas has shown interest. I have been teaching him the basics. He has a steady hand and a patient mind." Across the room, Clara worked on her embroidery. The hoop was held in her left hand, her needle moving in and out with practiced ease. She was working on a design of roses and vines, the pattern slowly emerging on the white fabric. The thread was a soft rose color, matching the roses that bloomed in her garden during the summer. Her movements were rhythmic, almost hypnotic. Each stitch was placed with care, building the pattern one thread at a time. The work did not require intense concentration, allowing her mind to wander freely, to drift through pleasant thoughts and gentle memories. She thought of her own mother, who had taught her to embroider when she was no older than Emily. She remembered sitting in her mother's parlor, the fire crackling in the grate, her small fingers struggling to hold the needle. Her mother's hands, gentle and patient, guiding her through the first stitches. "It takes time," her mother had said, "but the beauty is worth the patience." Clara smiled at the memory, her needle moving steadily. She could almost feel her mother's presence in the room, a gentle spirit watching over her work. Thomas sat at the small desk near the window, his slate board in front of him, a piece of chalk in his hand. He was drawing a steam engine, his young face serious with concentration. The drawing was detailed with careful attention to the wheels, the boiler, the connecting rods. He had been working on the drawing for several days, adding new details each evening. The engine was based on the ones he saw at the railway station when he accompanied his father to the office. He had studied them carefully, noting the way the pistons moved, the shape of the smokestack, the intricate network of pipes and valves. This was not just a drawing to Thomas, it was a dream. He wanted to design engines, to create machines that would carry people across the country at ever-increasing speeds. He wanted to be part of the great transformation of his age. Emily sat on the rug near the fire, her doll in her arms. The doll was a simple one, with a porcelain face and a cloth body, dressed in a blue dress that Clara had sewn for it. Emily had named her Rose, and she was the recipient of many whispered stories and secret confidences. "Rose," Emily whispered, her voice barely audible. "Shall I tell you a story?" The doll, of course, did not answer, but Emily did not mind. She had learned to tell stories to herself, to create entire worlds of imagination in the quiet of the evening. "Once upon a time," she began, "there was a little girl who lived in a house by the sea. She had a doll just like you, and they went on adventures together. They sailed on ships made of leaves, and they rode on clouds, and they sang songs to the moon." Her voice was soft and dreamy, carrying the story forward with a natural grace. Her small hands moved the doll in gestures that matched the narrative, bringing the story to life in her own imaginative way. Outside, the fog had thickened, pressing against the windows like a soft, gray blanket. The gas lamps in the street below were barely visible, their light reduced to faint, glowing halos in the mist. The occasional sound of a carriage drifted up from the street. The clatter of hooves, the rumble of wheels, muffled and distant, as if it belonged to a different world entirely. Inside the parlor, the sounds of the evening continued. The soft crackle of the fire, the gentle tick of the clock, the quiet scratch of pen on paper, the rhythmic click of knitting needles. They blended together into a symphony of domestic peace, a soundtrack of contentment that had been playing in this room for years. Clara finished a section of her embroidery and held it up to the light, admiring her work. The roses were taking shape, their petals forming a beautiful pattern that seemed to glow in the soft lamplight. She smiled, satisfied with her progress. "Clara," Edward said, looking up from his watch, "that is coming along beautifully. You have such a gift for needlework." Clara lowered the fabric, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. "It is nothing special, just a simple pattern." "Nothing special?" Edward laughed softly. "My dear, you could sell that embroidery in a shop in London. It is that lovely." Clara shook her head, but she was smiling. "You are too kind, my dear, but I appreciate the compliment." The family continued their gentle pursuits, the quiet sounds of their activities filling the comfortable silence. The fire burned low, its glow casting long shadows across the room. The clock ticked steadily, marking the slow passage of time. This was the beauty of Victorian evenings. Productive yet unhurried, creative yet calm. Each person found their own peaceful occupation, and together they created a symphony of small, comforting sounds that eased the mind and prepared the heart for rest. The clock on the mantelpiece chimed 8:30, its soft, melodic notes signaling that the evening had reached its natural turning point. Clara set down her embroidery and stretched her arms above her head, her back aching slightly from the hours of seated work. Edward closed his watch case and pocketed the tiny screwdriver. "Children," Clara said softly, her voice warm and gentle, "it is time to prepare for bed." Emily looked up from her doll, her eyes already heavy with sleep. "But Mama, I'm not tired," she protested, even as a yawn escaped her lips. Clara smiled, her heart full of tenderness for her youngest child. "I know, my dear, but the night is calling and you must answer. Come now." She rose from her chair, her movements slow and unhurried. She crossed to the rug where Emily sat and extended her hand. Emily took it, her small fingers warm in her mother's grasp, and allowed herself to be led toward the stairs. Thomas set down his slate board with a soft sigh. He was older now, and the bedtime ritual was no longer something he looked forward to with the same eager anticipation as his younger sister. But he had learned to accept it as part of the natural rhythm of the household, and he rose without complaint. "Good night, Father," he said, his voice carrying the slight awkwardness of adolescence. Edward looked up and smiled at his son. "Good night, Thomas. Sleep well. I shall see you in the morning." "Good night, Papa," Emily said, her voice already fading as the pull of sleep grew stronger. The stairs were narrow, worn smooth by years of footsteps. The gas lamp on the landing cast a soft, golden light, illuminating the papered walls with their pattern of climbing roses. Clara walked slowly, her hand resting lightly on the banister, her footsteps measured and careful. The children's rooms were at the top of the stairs. Thomas's room was on the left, a small but comfortable space with a single bed, a desk, and a bookshelf filled with his growing collection of books. Emily's room was on the right, furnished with a small bed, a wardrobe, and a rocking horse that had been a gift from her grandmother. Margaret, the maid, had already been up to light the lamps and prepare the rooms. A small fire burned in each grate, their warmth taking the chill from the air. The beds were turned down, the quilts folded back to reveal crisp white sheets. Emily's room was softly lit by a small lamp on the bedside table, its shade decorated with painted flowers. Clara led her daughter to the washstand, where a basin of warm water was waiting. Emily splashed the water on her face, the warmth soothing her drowsy features. Clara helped her into her nightclothes, a soft flannel gown with a high neck and long sleeves, the fabric warm and comfortable. Once she was ready, Emily climbed into her bed and nestled into the pillows. The sheets were cool against her skin, the quilts soft and warm. Clara pulled the covers up to Emily's chin and tucked them around her, her movements careful and maternal. "Mama," Emily said, her voice small and drowsy, "will you say the prayer with me?" Clara nodded. "Of course, my dear." She sat on the edge of the bed, and Emily closed her eyes, her small hands folded together on top of the quilt. Her lips moved softly, repeating the familiar words of the prayer she had learned as a small child. "Now I lay me down to sleep," Emily whispered, her voice soft and sweet. "I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. Amen." Her eyes fluttered open, and she looked up at her mother. "Mama, will you stay with me until I fall asleep?" Clara smoothed her daughter's hair back from her forehead, her touch gentle and loving. "I will stay for a little while, my dear, but you must close your eyes and let sleep come." Emily nodded and closed her eyes again. Clara stayed where she was, her hand resting lightly on her daughter's forehead, feeling the warmth of sleep slowly settling over the child. In the room next door, Edward was carrying out the same ritual with Thomas. He helped his son prepare for bed, the quiet efficiency of years of practice guiding his actions. There was less conversation between father and son than between mother and daughter. Thomas was at an age where words were sometimes difficult, but the silence was comfortable, a shared space of understanding. Edward sat on the edge of Thomas's bed, his large frame looking slightly out of place in the small room. "You did well with your drawing tonight," he said. The details were very accurate. Thomas looked up, a faint flush of pleasure coloring his cheeks. "Do you really think so, Father? I was not sure about the boiler." Edward considered the drawing, picturing it in his mind. The boiler could be slightly larger, perhaps, but the shape is correct. The proportions are good. You have a natural talent, Thomas. Thomas smiled, the expression lighting up his young face. "Thank you, Father. I want to get it perfect." "The pursuit of perfection is worthy," Edward said, his voice gentle. "But remember to enjoy the process as well. The journey is just as important as the destination." He reached over and ruffled his son's hair, the gesture one of love and affection. "Now sleep well. Tomorrow is another day." Thomas nodded, his eyes growing heavy. "Good night, Father." Edward rose and crossed to the door, pausing for a moment to look back at his son. Thomas was already settling into the pillows, his breathing slowing, his face relaxed in the peace of approaching sleep. Clara appeared in the doorway, having finished with Emily. She and Edward exchanged a look of deep, shared love and understanding, then walked together toward the stairs. "I think they will sleep well tonight," Clara said softly. "They had a busy day." Edward nodded, his hand finding hers. "They are growing so quickly. It seems like only yesterday that we brought them home from the hospital." Clara squeezed his hand. "We are blessed, my dear. We are truly blessed." The children's bedtime ritual was complete. The house settled into its evening stillness, the sounds of the children's breathing filtering softly through the closed doors. The gas lamps on the landing hissed gently, casting long golden shadows across the wallpapered walls. The adults made their way back downstairs, the creaking of the old stairs a familiar, comforting sound. The warmth of the parlor waited for them, its fire still glowing in the grate. Once the children were safely tucked into their beds and the sounds of their peaceful breathing had faded from the floor above, Edward and Clara returned to the parlor. The fire had burned low in their absence, but a few coals still glowed with a warm, red light. Clara added a small log to the grate, and the flames responded with a soft, grateful crackle, sending up a brief shower of sparks. Edward settled into his armchair with a contented sigh. The day had been full: work at the office, the walk home, the dinner, the time with the children. Now, at last, he had a moment of quiet with his wife, a time that belonged only to them. Clara moved to the sideboard, where a silver tray held a decanter and a small glass. She poured a measure of sherry and brought it to her husband, his favorite drink to end the day. Then she poured a cup of tea for herself. The leaves had been steeping in the pot, and the liquid was dark and fragrant. She took her seat across from Edward, the firelight casting a warm glow on both of them. The room was hushed, filled only with the soft crackle of the fire and the steady tick of the clock on the mantelpiece. For a long moment, they sat in companionable silence, simply enjoying the peace of the evening. The sherry warmed Edward's chest, and the tea soothed Clara's throat. The firelight danced, and the shadows moved slowly across the walls. "Edward," Clara said softly, "I have been thinking about the holidays." Edward looked up, his eyes bright with interest. "What about them?" Clara set down her teacup and leaned forward slightly. "I was thinking that we might host a small gathering this year, perhaps a Christmas party for the family and a few close friends. Nothing grand, nothing elaborate, just a warm, comfortable evening with the people we love." Edward considered the idea, a smile spreading slowly across his face. "I think that sounds lovely, my dear. It would be a wonderful way to celebrate the season." Clara's face lit up with pleasure. "I am so glad you agree. I have already started making a list of who we should invite, and I thought we could serve the traditional Christmas pudding, perhaps with some of the cakes that my mother taught me to make. We could sing carols," Edward added, his voice warm with nostalgia. "And I could read the Christmas story from the Bible, just as my father used to do." Clara nodded, her heart full of anticipation. "It will be a beautiful evening. The children will be so excited." They continued to talk, their conversation flowing slowly and gently. They spoke of the children's education, of Clara's plans for the garden, of the new curtain fabric she had seen at the shops, of Edward's work and the characters he encountered in the office. There was no urgency to their words, no pressure. They simply enjoyed the luxury of being together, of sharing the small details of their lives. Edward finished his sherry and set the glass aside. He leaned back in his chair, his eyes growing heavy. The fire crackled softly, and the clock ticked steadily, and he felt the peace of the evening settling over him like a blanket. "Clara," he said, his voice soft with the drowsiness that was slowly claiming him. "Do you ever think about what it was like before we were married?" Clara looked up, her embroidery paused in her hands. "What do you mean?" Edward smiled, the expression warm on his tired face. "I mean the days before we met, the days when we were both young, both searching for something we didn't quite understand. And then we found each other." Clara set down her embroidery and looked at her husband across the fire. The firelight softened his features, making him look younger than his years. She remembered the first time she saw him, at a garden party in the home of her aunt. He was standing by the fountain, his dark hair tousled by the breeze, his eyes bright with quiet intelligence. "I remember," she said softly. "I remember that I was trying to impress you. I was so nervous." Edward laughed, a warm, rumbling sound. "You had no need to be nervous. I was completely enchanted from the first moment I saw you. You were the most beautiful woman I had ever seen." Clara felt a warmth spread through her, not just from the fire but from the memory of that long-ago garden party. "And you were the kindest man I had ever met. You listened to me when no one else would. You made me feel as though my thoughts mattered." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the years between them filled with shared memories and shared love. "I am grateful," Clara said quietly, for every moment we have had together. I am grateful for the children, for this home, for the peace we have found." Edward nodded, his eyes bright. "As am I, my dear, as am I." The fire crackled softly, and the clock ticked steadily, and the night deepened around them. The world outside was dark and cold, but inside the parlor, there was only warmth and light and the quiet joy of two souls who had found each other. This was the adults' quiet hour, a time of restful reflection, of shared memories, of deep and abiding love. It was the most precious part of the evening, the time when the bonds of marriage were strengthened in the soft glow of gaslight and fire. While the family settled into the peaceful rhythm of their evening, downstairs in the kitchen, Margaret and the cook, Mrs. Bennet, were finishing their own evening routines. The kitchen was a warm, bustling space, its large fireplace filled with a roaring fire that kept the room cozy despite the chill of the autumn evening outside. Mrs. Bennet was a round, cheerful woman of 50, her hair streaked with gray, her face flushed from the heat of the cooking fire. She had been with the Hawthorne household for over 15 years, having joined them when Clara was expecting Thomas. She had seen the family through births and deaths, through good times and lean ones, and she was as much a part of the household as any of the family members. She stood at the large wooden table, cleaning the dishes that had been used for the family's dinner. The china was carefully washed, dried, and placed in the cupboard, each piece handled with the care of long habit. The silverware was polished with a soft cloth, returning its shine. Margaret, the young maid, was wiping down the counters with a damp rag, her movements efficient and thorough. She had been with the Hawthorne household for 3 years, having come from the countryside to find work in the city. She was a quiet, serious girl, her face showing the strain of being away from her family. But she had found a kind of peace in the ordered life of the Hawthorne household. "Shall I bring in more wood for the morning fire, Mrs. Bennet?" Margaret asked, her voice soft and respectful. Mrs. Bennet nodded, wiping her hands on her apron. "That would be kind of you, Margaret. It is cold out, and we shall need a good fire to warm the house in the morning." Margaret nodded and slipped out the back door, returning a few minutes later with an armful of wood. The fire in the kitchen hearth crackled happily, its warmth spreading through the room, driving away the chill that had crept in with the night. The two women worked in companionable silence, the sounds of their work blending together. The clink of dishes, the splash of water, the soft rustle of cloth. The kitchen was at the back of the house, its windows facing the garden, and the sounds of the street were muffled and distant. Mrs. Bennet wiped down the table and hung the rag to dry. She poured herself and Margaret a cup of tea, and they sat at the small table near the fire, taking a moment's rest before the final tasks of the evening. "How was your day, Margaret?" Mrs. Bennet asked, her voice warm and motherly. Margaret smiled, a rare expression on her usually serious face. "It was a good day, Mrs. Bennet. The family was very kind. Mrs. Hawthorne thanked me for the soup, and Mr. Hawthorne said he was pleased with the pudding. Mrs. Bennet nodded, her eyes bright with approval. They are a good family, the Hawthornes. They treat us well, and they never forget that we are human beings with feelings and needs. It is not like that in every household, Margaret. I have worked in homes where the servants were treated no better than the furniture. Margaret nodded, her eyes thoughtful. I am grateful for this position. My mother always told me to look for kindness when I seek work, and I found it here. Mrs. Bennet reached over and patted the young maid's hand. You are a good girl, Margaret, and you will go far in life. The Hawthornes will help you, I am sure of it. They see your worth. The two women continued to talk, their voices low and gentle. They spoke of their families, of the letters they had received, of the news from the countryside. They shared the small details of their lives, building the bonds of friendship that made the household feel like a family. In the pantry, the cook had prepared the breakfast for the morning: bread and butter, jam, and the fixings for porridge. The milk was in the cooler and the eggs were in the basket. Everything was ready for the new day. Sound of soft voices, clink of dishes, gentle footsteps. Music fades slowly. By 9:30, the kitchen was clean and tidy. The fire was banked for the night, its embers glowing with a soft, warm light. The dishes were put away, the counters were wiped, and the floor was swept. Mrs. Bennet and Margaret climbed the narrow back stairs to their rooms, their footsteps soft on the worn wooden steps. Margaret paused at her door, turning to look back at the older woman. "Good night, Mrs. Bennet," she said softly. "Good night, Margaret," the cook replied, her voice warm. "Sleep well." The two women retired to their separate rooms, their small spaces warm and comfortable. Margaret wrote a quick letter to her family, her words filled with affection and the quiet hope that her mother was well. Mrs. Bennet settled into her chair by the small fire in her room, a book in her hands, the words a gentle escape from the worries of the day. The entire household, masters and servants alike, settled into the shared peace of the Victorian night. The house was still, its walls holding the warmth of the day, its rooms filled with the soft sounds of sleep. By 10 o'clock, the Hawthorne house was completely quiet. The gas lamps throughout the house had been turned low or extinguished, leaving only a faint, golden glow in the hallway and a single lamp burning in the parlor. The fires had been banked for the night, their embers glowing with a soft, warm light that would slowly fade as the hours passed. Upstairs, the family slept deeply. Emily lay curled in her bed, her doll Rose tucked securely under her arm, her small face peaceful and relaxed. Her dreams were gentle, filled with the images of the evening, the warm fire, her mother's voice, the taste of the steamed pudding. Thomas lay in his room, his young body relaxed, his breathing slow and steady. His dreams were of steam engines and railways, of trains rushing through the countryside, of a future filled with adventure and discovery. He was growing, his mind expanding with each passing day, and even in sleep, he continued to learn and explore. Edward and Clara slept in the master bedroom, their twin beds separated by a small table. Edward's breathing was deep and regular, his face relaxed, the lines of his daily worries smoothed away by the peace of sleep. Clara lay on her side, one hand resting on her pillow, her face soft and peaceful. The gas lamp on the bedside table was turned down low, its flame a tiny, flickering point of light that cast gentle shadows on the wall. The house itself seemed to breathe. The wooden floorboards creaked softly as they settled. The walls sighed with the warmth of the fires, and the windows hummed faintly as the wind pressed against the glass. It was a living house, a warm and welcoming shelter that held its family safely within its walls. Outside, the London fog had thickened into a soft, gray blanket that covered the streets and the houses and the distant glow of the street lamps. The fog muffled all sounds, creating a world of silence and softness. The occasional carriage passed by, its wheels nearly silent on the damp cobblestones. The night watchman's footsteps could be heard, far away, the soft rhythm of his steps a comforting reminder that the city was still awake, still watching over its sleeping inhabitants. The gas lamps in the street glowed with a soft, golden light, their flames steady against the fog. They had been burning all evening, their light a constant presence in the darkness. Now they flickered slightly, as if settling into their own rest, waiting for the dawn that would come with the new day. The clock on the mantelpiece in the parlor ticked steadily, its measured rhythm marking the slow passage of time. The fire in the grate had burned down to glowing embers, their light a faint, warm glow that cast long shadows across the room. The parlor was empty now, its cushions bearing the faint impressions of the family who had occupied them earlier. In the kitchen, Mrs. Bennet slept in her room, her breathing slow and peaceful. Margaret lay in her narrow bed, her hands folded on her chest, her face relaxed. The two women had worked hard that day, and sleep came easily, their bodies grateful for the rest. The whole house was at peace. The evening had done its gentle work, restoring bodies, soothing spirits, and preparing the family for the new day that would dawn in a few short hours. Long pause, soft breathing, gentle silence. As you listen now, dear listener, let the peace of the Hawthorne household settle over you. Let the soft, steady rhythm of the house carry you deeper and deeper into rest. The fire glows faintly. The clock ticks softly. The fog wraps the world in a soft, gray blanket. The house is sleeping, and so can you. Feel the warmth of the gaslight, gentle and golden. Feel the comfort of the wool blankets, soft and heavy. Feel the safety of the walls around you, holding you close, keeping you warm. The evening is done. The night is deep. Sleep is here, waiting to carry you into its gentle embrace. Good night, dear listener. Sleep well. Sleep deep. Sleep in peace. And so, dear listener, our journey to Victorian England comes to an end. The Hawthorne family sleeps peacefully in their home on Elm Street, wrapped in the warmth of gaslight and fire, carried by the gentle rhythms of their quiet, orderly lives. I hope this story has brought you comfort, relaxation, and the deep, restful sleep you deserve. The world outside may be busy, may be noisy, may be filled with worries and cares. But here in this moment, there is only peace, only warmth, only the soft, gentle embrace of the night. My name is Mrinmoy, and I am so grateful that you chose to spend this time with me. May the peace of the Victorian evening stay with you, carrying you through the night and into a new day filled with hope and joy. Sleep well, dear listener. Sleep deep. Sleep in perfect peace. Good night.